Thanks so much for joining me for this talk about how do we create more successful conscious companies. Earlier in the ROI of Y conference, there was a lot of talk about culture and the way that you have to lead, and all of that is paramount. However, I really want to drill down on some practical advice based on some very important data that I'll share with you on how to create more successful, as in profitable, or what I call purposeful profits. So first of all, I'm going to give you some data about more entrepreneurs entering the entrepreneurial space, and many of them are more conscious, which is exciting. Then I'm going to give you some more data about the 4 types of conscious entrepreneurs that we found in our research. Then we'll talk about practically how do we equip those companies to be more successful in their pursuit of making the world better. So starting with some global trends, this was a study a couple of years ago from funders and founders. And at the time, they said there were over 400 million entrepreneurs globally. Fast forward, recently, 2021, a study was released from Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, and they're estimating 582 million entrepreneurs. So that's 12% of the population. In the United States, it's estimated to be about 7% of the population of the people that exist globally. 582, it's 12% of the population. In the US, it's about 7% of the population are entrepreneurs. Of those entrepreneurial ventures, about 10 to 12% are what we consider to be conscious entrepreneurs. And a conscious entrepreneur has the dual focus of making the world better, but also earning a decent living and building a profitable company or purposeful profits. So let's look at that segment. This is from a study that one of my companies did that ended last year. It was about a 2.5-year study, and we looked at the characteristics of conscious entrepreneurship. And we found there's actually 4 different types of conscious entrepreneurs. The first type, and where most people enter, is what I call a purposepreneur, meaning the work itself is meaningful to them. They feel like they're living their purpose. They're doing what they're called to do. And the majority of the new business ideas coming into the conscious entrepreneur space come into that particular quadrant. And our research showed that greater than 50% of all conscious entrepreneurs would classify themselves as a purposepreneur. That's the name that we came up with it. The challenge is the majority of them are earning less than $10,000 a month, which is not sustainable. In many cases, they could go get a job and earn more by the time you take out taxes and business expenses. So more than half of all of the conscious entrepreneurs that exist, this is globally as well as in the US, are not earning a sustainable income. And in the US, it's very alarming because $10,000 a month does not get you very far when you're really thinking about all of the expenses associated with growing and building a business. Now, some of those purposepreneurs evolve, and they evolve where not just the work is meaningful, but the people that they're serving also creates meaning. So that means they're wanting to work with the homeless, or wanting to work to help the oceans, or they're wanting to deploy, as I did, to helping entrepreneurs. They've really dedicated themselves to not just a type of work, but to a particular segment that they want to help. And in that scenario, they're looking typically at making what we call a micro impact. They're collaborating and they want to shift their local community, whether that community is Austin's homeless shelters, or here in Dallas, in helping with City Square and the underprivileged communities that are here. Their work is both meaningful, but their heart is really with the people that they're serving. Now, it's interesting, about a little more than 35 to 36% of folks fall into that category. So conscious entrepreneurs that are both their work is meaningful, as well as they're called to serve a certain type of, a certain segment of the population. So that's a good number as well. And they're earning somewhere between $5,000 to $20,000 a month. Most of the ones start as purposepreneurs. A good portion of them evolve over a 2 to 3 year period to heart centerpreneurs. but their income is still not sustainable by the time you take out taxes and business expenses and the resources that you need to run your business. Now, I really want you to wrap your mind around this, because 85 to 87% of all conscious entrepreneurs fall into these two categories. And the other two categories are when the entrepreneur has a more macro view. There's social impact ventures and mission-driven brands, which my companies are, where we've got a bigger vision. We're trying to shift industry and society in some way. And the work is definitely meaningful, but we want to make a bigger impact. And what I'm on a mission to do is to help those purposepreneurs and heart-centeredpreneurs learn how to scale their business so they can move into those upper two quadrants and make a bigger impact. That's the goal. How do we get those bottom quadrants to move up so they can make a bigger impact? And that's the rub. If you think about it, most of the programming that exists today for conscious companies exist around larger enterprises. And the blocking and tackling type of training that exists for smaller, these purposepreneurs and heart-centeredpreneurs, is traditional business training, lead magnets and click funnels and, how do you get someone to buy? And all of it is very inauthentic. And this is my calling. It's helping those companies at that, as purposepreneurs and heart-centeredpreneurs who are earning not a sustainable income, move into those upper quadrants where their business is more sustainable and they can make a bigger impact. Now, this idea, which is what ShiftCo is based on, is also fundamentally linked with why we wanted to partner with Do More Good and the ROI of Why conference is collaboration. The way that we're going to solve this problem is by collaborating. And I want to just try to drill down on the power of that. One of the things that we did is we piloted giving away free scholarships for conscious entrepreneurs to the ShiftCo platform and community from racially diverse and or economically disadvantaged communities. We did this very early in our process. Some of the insights that came out of that have forever changed me. For example, one of the scholarships that we gave, she created her own little sub-community for her local community that allowed the local population to improve their lives. So think about the cascading effect of that by helping her make her business idea more successful. She was able to create more sustainability in her community. And we saw that again and again and again. So we're trying to figure out, well, how do we scale that? How do we scale giving away these scholarships to help racially diverse communities or economically disadvantaged communities where I'm from? I grew up very, very poor, so I know what it's like to be in an economically disadvantaged communities. How do we go into those and find entrepreneurs who want to make the world better? How do we collaborate to do that? Give them free scholarships and training and things like that so that they can make a bigger impact. And that's a big, big, big part of what we're up to. So now, how do I recognize a conscious entrepreneur? Well, this was another fascinating thing from the study. There are three very distinct characteristics when you look at those smaller quadrants. Number one is, rather than thinking about their product from the question and the perception of will someone buy it, a conscious entrepreneur says, will it solve a problem? And if you think about yourself listening to this, that's probably the genesis of your business or enterprise, is you saw a problem that you wanted to solve. That is very different than a traditional entrepreneur. The second thing is when they go into the pricing metric, and we see this all the time, conscious entrepreneurs really struggle with pricing because they're asking themselves not what will someone pay, but how much is it worth? Now, I find that noble. However, if we don't teach them how to price their product based on value, and if we don't teach them how to generate more value for their target market, they can't raise their prices, which is why their income stays so low. And the pricing product paradigm, matching those two up, is one of the most important things a conscious entrepreneur has to learn. How do you both solve a problem and add value so that your product is differentiated and you can charge a reasonable price so that your business is more profitable? The third element is the way that they think about success. And this is where I get really excited. A traditional entrepreneur says, well, success is how much money will I make? Conscious entrepreneur says, can I make a difference? And if you think about the 85 to 87% of all conscious entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of them, both in the US and globally, they are all asking themselves these heart-centered questions. Can I make a difference? If we can show them how they can make a difference and build a more profitable and sustainable company, think about the impact that we could make by collaborating around that. And then the last thing has to do when their business gets a little larger. So when they're in that $10,000 to $20,000 a month, $20,000 to $50,000 a month, they start asking different questions about the way that they lead. This was also fascinating. A traditional entrepreneur says, who can I hire to grow my company? A conscious entrepreneur says, how can I grow a team that builds my company with me? So instinctively, as they're scaling that business, they're thinking differently about the culture and the way that they lead, but doing so not from an intellectual standpoint, but from a more soulful and heart-centered place. So what we've boiled this down to 3 pillars of purposeful profits. And the first, of course, starts with purpose. You've been hearing that from most of the speakers. And purpose is really about, what do we find meaningful? Will it make the world better? I really do believe in the space of conscious entrepreneurs, that conscious entrepreneurs, the business kind of chooses you. Like, you don't say, I'm going to go build this widget. The business selects me. And it's almost like I'm the vessel for this business to be born. And that's one of the hallmarks of a purposeful business, is the desire to make an impact, the desire to do things that are meaningful, the desire to make the world better. The second one is passion. The other thing that we found, and I lost a lot of money very early in my investing in purposeful businesses on this very thing, is you also have to be passionate about the work. It can't just be, I'm going to build a business because it's meaningful. I have to also love the work. And that is paramount. And then the third thing is actually teaching entrepreneurs how to build a business that both makes the world better and generates a profit. And that sounds on the surface very easy. Well, business training 101, teach them about financials, teach them about marketing and sales. No, it's not that simple, because most of the programming that exists that teaches those things teaches them in a very inauthentic way that violates most of the conscious business values we've been talking about in this conference. You've got to help them understand how to make a profit by enhancing the value that they provide. And in order to enhance the value that I provide, I've got to understand my buyer. So there's a very, very different way to teach how a business generates a profit as a conscious entrepreneur than in a traditional business. Therefore, the programming needs to be different. So that's where we created the Conscious Business Growth Platform. I used it in my own portfolio, and several of my clients approached me about 4 years ago and said, we need to create a community around this platform. And what the Conscious Business Growth Platform teaches conscious entrepreneurs is how to, first of all, get their business stood up, whether they've been in business for 10 years or 10 months, doesn't matter. There's 3 things that you have to learn how to do to build an authentic and successful conscious business. At a minimum, we want all of our members in the shape phase at a minimum. So far, we're 1 year up and 60% have moved into shape, which is exciting. I want to get the other 40% there. And in the shape phase, they're going to learn how to scale the business. Now, here's the key in shape. If you fall into that category, to be authentic, to be a conscious business, you have to scale the experience that you provide, not the business. And one of the mistakes that people make is they learn how to scale the business from a traditional entrepreneur that's teaching those skills, and they don't actually scale the experience, the value that they're providing, and they set themselves up for failure. The third, of course, is build. When you start putting the foundation in place, there's 8 building blocks that you have to put in place to get to business above $1 million. And then you get into those leadership areas that many of the speakers have been talking about, where culture and leadership and being an authentic leader really matter. The problem is the red circle and the orange circle, 85 to 87% of all conscious entrepreneurs globally and in the US are in those 2 quadrants, and they need different programming. They need to learn different skills. So the last thing I want to talk about is probably one of the hardest lessons for me. I had been a very successful executive, growing companies, taking them public. I started my own consulting company in 2002, was known for somebody you went to when you wanted to grow your business. I sold that business in 2008, started this purposeful Shark Tank that I've got called Share on Purpose. And I thought, I'm going to put these business growth methods to work, and I'm going to make the world better. Brilliant, huge vision. Failed miserably. And I mean, I failed miserably. And here's why. Most of the traditional business growth techniques do not work for conscious businesses. And most of the conscious businesses are led by entrepreneurs, and 85 to 87% of those are not earning enough income to really be sustainable. So part of what we teach in ShiftCo is that your business grows as you evolve. And what that means is, in addition to the business training, there needs to be a lot of personal development training, things like confidence and mindset and conscious business basics, presence. Why is presence so important as a leader, as you're building your business? How do you handle stress? And that notion of your business growing as you evolve was the hardest lesson for me to learn, but it's probably made the biggest difference in everything that I do. And these challenges that entrepreneurs have, we've boiled them down to 3 challenges and a corresponding set of priorities. Number 1 is authenticity rules in every area. You can't do lead magnets and click funnels and that type of stuff. So scrap that. It's about building relationships with your buyer. And how do you do that in a way that is authentic? And it's not just authenticity when you're working with your customers. It's being authentic when you're generating new business as well. The second one is the transformation is the inside out. I think all of the speakers that you heard this over the course of this conference covered that in some way, and it really is true. Well, we've got to help conscious entrepreneurs make that transformation. We can't just tell them they need to do it. How do you actually show them how to make an inside out transformation? How do you help them do the inner work so that the outer work and the bigger impact can be made with their business? And then I end with this: it grows as we evolve. The last thing I want to say is our director of programming, Stephen Dynaco, he used to be the director of programming for Humanities team. And he said to me one day, conscious evolution itself is entrepreneurial. And I kind of it was one of those statements that just caused me to go, And he proceeded to explain, if you really look at conscious evolution, where you're deliberately evolving, it's what entrepreneurs do every day. The problem is 85 to 87% of the conscious entrepreneurs that are out there don't have the programming that they need in order to evolve their business. That's what we're trying to impact. And if that's what you're trying to impact, let's collaborate. So I want to thank the team at the ROI of Y conference for inviting me. I learned a lot myself, and I loved connecting with other conscious leaders around the world. And I thank you guys for tuning in today.